Wouldn't it be nice to have several thought leaders in your industry know and love your brand? Start a podcast. Invite your industry's thought leaders to be guests on your show and start reaping the benefits of having a network full of industry influencers. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm Jonathan Green.
And I'm James Carberry.
Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. Today we are joined by Matt Tortora. He works with B2B technology companies. He helps them improve sales performance and overall sales team effectiveness. Matt, welcome to the show.
Jonathan, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. We touched base the other week. I was on my deathbed, and you were very nice about sort of adjusting your schedule to fit this recording. So I really do appreciate getting you on the show, taking some time out of your busy schedule. So before we get into today's topic, which I think is going to be fantastic, maybe you can just sort of set the stage for our audience, give us a little overview of what you're up to these days and kind of your journey to get there.
Yep, absolutely. So working with B2B SaaS and technology companies, helping them improve sales performance by really working with them to implement the processes, playbooks, and training that is geared towards increasing the effectiveness of their sales team, providing more value to buyers throughout the evaluation process, and really leveraging the sales process and the marketing process as an opportunity to create a competitive advantage and separate themselves from the pack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that definitely speaks to your area of expertise in today's topic. We're going to be talking about the 4 things you need to know about research-driven sales and marketing. So I think probably the first question that I have, the best jumping off point is kind of, why is there a need for a research role?
Yeah, good question. And what's driving the need for a research role is really the evolution of modern sales and the B2B buyer journey. And that has magnified the need for information, data, and insights. And that's both a need on the part of the seller as well as the part of the buyer. And B2B buyers are demanding information and doing so long before they ever engage with any vendor. So vendors have to build a wealth of insight, not just to satisfy the needs of those buyers, but also increase the effectiveness of both their sales and marketing teams. And the content that's being produced across different markets is becoming very repetitive. Everyone's sharing the same information, saying it in a slightly different way, so there's a lot of noise. And subsequently, we're realizing content's no longer king. Anyone can produce content. It's the context surrounding that content that is really what ends up being impactful. And having context relies on more than just subject matter expertise. It also relies on research and a formalized process behind research.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. There is such a prolific amount of content out there. It's almost, you've gotten to the point where if you are not producing content of some sort in some capacity, I mean, you're behind the 8 ball.
Yep, you absolutely are. So just to stay up with the pack, you have to produce content. But then you want to talk about separating yourself. You have to produce new content, find new information, and come to the table with new insights.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you've come to this decision. You've sort of defined a little bit of why even the need for this research role. But how does it affect the organization at that point?
Yeah, it does several things, and it positively impacts an organization and a B2B organization in a couple ways. First and foremost, as I mentioned, it really separates a company and positions them as a thought leader in their market. It also influences buyers long before person-to-person engagement ever occurs during the evaluation process. It equips salespeople with the right information around both educating buyers, but also information around who are the right buyers to target and what do those buyers care about. And it really affects what I call the revenue acquisition cycle and all components of that. So before we ever engage with the buyer, understanding who we're targeting, what they care about, when to target them, during engagement, during the evaluation process where there's actual person-to-person interaction occurring, and then while they're a customer. And customer success efforts and support efforts and understanding what information they're going to care about as their industry evolves, as new challenges emerge, and as the vendor's offering emerges as well. And all of this, again, creates a strong competitive advantage for a company.
Yeah, yep. And, so then at this point, where do you focus these sort of research efforts? Is there some direction behind this?
There is. The first and a fairly obvious one is behind industry insights and trends. And, a strong correlation already exists between many marketing roles and market research activity. But market research is a process that needs to be formalized and ongoing. As markets and buyer needs evolve, companies must maintain a constant and consistent process for gathering relevant information, and then, of course, subsequently using that information when the time calls for it. Secondly, buyer behavior. Sales leaders, marketing leaders, and customer success leaders need to start asking themselves questions like, why did our current customers buy our solution? For those companies that evaluated our solution but decided not to buy, why did they make that decision? What buyer perceived risks were present during the evaluation process? And there needs to be a formalized process behind engaging with customers and people who maybe did not become customers so this information can be captured. And the third, and I think most important, is data. When relevant, data is a very, very valuable component of the research process. The effects that data-backed insight can have on someone's ability to influence and differentiate during the evaluation process is significant. And, when properly applied, data will bring validity to the insight someone's delivering. Again, be another strong differentiator, especially if you're delivering data from research your organization ran. And also make the process of building a business case far more compelling and valid for the prospect.
Okay, so Matt, this next question is usually my favorite in the interview because there's a lot of great ideas out there. There's a lot of thought leaders and people that can inspire, and you think, okay, this is going to change the whole way I do business, but how do I do it? So I would like if we can get into, how do we implement some of these things that you're talking about? How does it change based on possibly your company size or your company structure, maybe even your industry? If you have some real world examples for us, I would love to hear about that.
Yep. So, the size and maturity of an organization is absolutely the first thing that needs to be taken into consideration. This is not an initiative, at least on a full-time basis, that I would ever recommend a very early or even growth stage company take on. So, call it less than 50 full-time employees. There's just not enough resource bandwidth available at that point. As an organization matures, this is a role that I recommend be a full-time role. And in larger organizations with multiple products selling into multiple verticals, I absolutely recommend multiple people in this role, simply because of the sheer workload. Now, in terms of where that role would reside within the organization, in my opinion, it resides somewhere in the revenue team. So call that sales, marketing, customer success. But there's really no right or wrong answer as far as what department that role would reside in. The sales enablement function and the growth of that role and attention focused on sales enablement is really, in my opinion, the most logical place for a research-specific role to reside.
Yeah. All right, that makes a lot of sense. So, Matt, you were mentioning, gathering data before and being able to use it effectively. I almost feel like sometimes, we have these incredible resources available, incredible pieces of software that allow us to track metrics that were, never before able to just keep track of that or have that data available. Is there a certain point where there's just too much information? At a certain point, you have to just do something with it. You have to narrow it down. You have to focus your efforts. I mean, you may have all this data sitting around, but until you're able to use it effectively, it's just it's like sitting in a storage box somewhere. It's not actually doing anything. It's maybe even costing you resources to capture this information in the first place. Do you have some advice in terms of, what information should a company or an organization maybe be focusing on? What is the best way to use that data after they have it?
Yep. So the simple answer to your question is the information, the data, and the insights, they're going to be the right insights and information to focus on are those that drive results. And what I mean by that is all of these insights, all of this data, all this information that we'd be sharing with customers isn't valuable unless we can tie it to implications in business outcomes. Data and insights for the sake of just having data and insights and sounding intelligent means nothing. So unless that information can be directly correlated to business outcomes, it should not be used. Now, that being said, during the research process, we will absolutely gather data that we end up not using, and that's fine. That's part of the process. That's part of separating the proverbial wheat from the chaff. But it has to be tied to implications. And I talk about the revenue acquisition cycle and doing research before we ever engage with buyers. Again, we have to be able to tie that information to direct implications from our sales and marketing efforts as well. And if we can't tie that to implications, that's the indicator that that data and information is really not as valuable as we may think.
Yeah. Matt, is there anything about this sort of the research-driven sales and marketing that we didn't get a chance to talk about yet on today's episode?
No, but in conclusion, obviously I feel very, very strongly about the importance of a research-driven sales and marketing and revenue team. And, that's really driven by the fact that the B2B technology landscape is becoming increasingly competitive. Not only are verticals like the SaaS space, for example, becoming very crowded, but we're also seeing a drastic increase in competition for buyers' attention. Like I said earlier, there's just a massive amount of content being produced, and most of it just really saying the same thing and leading everyone to the same place. So the B2B revenue teams who become research-first organizations and come to the table with data and insights that others don't have will be the ones that separate themselves from the pack, create more value for the buyer, and ultimately win more opportunities.
Yep. Absolutely. Matt, you're making a lot of sense, certainly to me, I'm sure to our audience as well. And if anyone in our audience is interested in connecting with you, finding more about, what we've been talking about today, or just following up with you, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
They can go directly to my site, Activayte.com. That's ACTIVAYTE.com. Or they can reach me at matt@activayte.com, or of course find me on LinkedIn or Twitter.
Perfect. Matt, again, thank you so much for taking some time out of your schedule to join us here on the show today. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. I appreciate the time as well.
To ensure that you never miss an episode of the B2B Growth Show, subscribe to the show on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. This guarantees that every episode will get delivered directly to your device.
If you or someone you know would be an incredible guest for the B2B Growth Show, email me at jonathan@sweetfishmedia.com. Let us know. We love connecting with B2B executives, and we love sharing their wisdom and perspective with our audience.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.